So, in my quick presentation, I want to kind of set the scene for you. Now, of course, we know we live in uncertain times. We know we live in a uncertain digital world. In fact, there's a lot of things that are going on. So I'm not going to talk about the big trends of war in Ukraine, inflation attacking the world, the great resignation, everyone trying to hold on to jobs now because they may be rethinking the great resignation, the change in technology, COVID pandemic, which is still with us, monkeypox even. A lot of things are very worrisome. A lot of things leave us in an uncertain future. And that actually has an So what we're saying is there are 10 big trends that are actually impacting digital specifically. Number one, over the last 2 years of COVID, we've seen 10 years of digital transformation forced on businesses. We've seen consumers coming online in record numbers. In fact, close to 100 million new consumers have come online in Southeast Asia during the COVID pandemic. We've seen a push towards e-commerce. I mean, who hasn't bought groceries or shopped online over the pandemic period? We also know that we need to make sure that we're thinking for a post-pandemic future. What does hybrid work look like? What does that mean for us? New tools, new processes, new ways of working, the pushback between working remotely versus coming into an office. We know in the tech world, there's been a consolidation. Yes, there are thousands of startups actually coming across with great new ideas every day. But in the tech space, we're seeing a consolidation of the big players. If you're in the world of advertising or marketing, you really only put your money into Facebook and Google nowadays. Maybe TikTok. That's it. It used to be a very fragmented world. It's consolidated down to a few companies that hold all that power. We're seeing AI, automation, and hyper-automation impact everybody. There's often a scary article every few months about who's going to lose their jobs to robots or AI and algorithms. Education's pretty high on that list, by the way. So who knows? Maybe we're all going to lose our jobs at some point. But the idea of AI is actually becoming mainstream. It's being used to actually help with machine learning, using data to actually look at how we automate, processes that just happen repeatedly. Digital customer service. I mean, we have to make sure our website works, our mobile works. We've got a seamless omni-channel experience. We're seeing data and data science play a key role, and every organization and every individual needs to be up to speed on data and analytics. Every organization to be successful needs data to signpost where they're going. And if you don't, you're going to fall behind. Whether you believe it or not, the metaverse is coming. There is no metaverse right now, by the way, but the future of being inside the matrix in immersive 3D, 4D, 5D internet is going to be a real thing. It will change and impact society significantly, but probably not until the 2030s. But companies like Facebook have become Meta, and they're actually now focusing on it. So we've got to think, what does that mean for us? Web3 and decentralization, which is really blockchain technologies. Fintechs have raised a lot of money in this space. Does that mean you should give up all your cash and buy Bitcoin? No, but it does mean that this is something we need to consider, because there's now a big chunk of society that's actually really embraced the decentralized world and blockchain. Digital misinformation and the fall of social media. We've seen recently that Facebook has actually started losing subscribers and members for the first time ever. They actually took a big hit to their revenue recently. And in big part because of misinformation, fake news, and just all this nonsense you see on the internet nowadays. Nobody knows who to believe, and trust in brands, in corporations, and government is eroding because of this misinformation. And finally, we're all being left behind. We all need at least 7 new skills over the next 3 years to keep up with the rapid change of digital transformation. If you're not a e-commerce, omni-channel, data, mobile, AI expert by now, somehow everyone's going to have to be at some point, because that's going to be our world. We're going to be using data for everything. We're going to understand how that applies to business, how that applies to employees, to customers, and so on. We all need to upskill and make sure that we're keeping up with digital transformation. But let me talk about what digital transformation is, because I think it does require a little bit of explanation. So often we go into this world of what we call digitization. Digitization is where we've gone from paper and we've turned that into an electronic process. turn a paper into an Excel spreadsheet. It's really just dipping the toe in the water. Most companies mistake digital transformation for this idea in the middle, which is called digitalization. That's where you can get an incremental improvement, say 30% more revenue or maybe 20% reduction in costs, etc. Here's where you start to adapt your processes to a digital world. But digital transformation is something unique. It's the idea of creation. You're creating new business models. And if you're familiar with things like red ocean and blue ocean strategy, you tend to make your competitors irrelevant. You tend to actually have a 10x or 100x impact. A $1 million company becomes a $1 billion company. You dominate an industry. In fact, you make your competitors irrelevant. And that's important because many people are striving for digital transformation, but end up falling short and actually start to digitize their paper into an Excel spreadsheet. That's not necessarily bad, but certainly it's not going to help you move your company forward, move yourself forward, etc. And there's a specific explanation of digital transformation specifically. It's made up of these things. First of all, in any organization, you need a clear strategy. Strategy is easy. How do I go from A to B? Is that a 1 year, 5 year, 20-year period? Number two, you need strong engagement. In any organization, what you have is this idea of the frozen middle. Senior leaders are all very excited. The junior and new employees love it. The middle hate it. Whatever the idea is, they don't want to do it. Stuck. So they're going to actually, whether they say it or not, they're going to stop you doing your digital transformation work. So you've got to take people on the journey with you. You have to be innovative because you need to be pushing forward. If you're not pushing forward, why bother? Technology, well, you can't do a digital transformation without the digital. So, but sometimes it's a little more complicated than that. I'll explain in the next slide. And of course, you need data to signpost to where you're going. Underpinning all of this is a very strong people culture. Does your CEO and your C-level agree and have a clear strategy? Is the culture one of environmental, psychological safety, where you can actually make mistakes, fail fast, and learn? Have you embraced digital across the organization and have a higher level of digital literacy? Is everyone on board in the same journey you're going on? Because unfortunately, most digital transformation programs will fail. You will fail. I have failed. Every organization does. When you lack strategy, you digitalize. Again, as I said, it's not a bad outcome, but basically you're doing all this great work, bringing in these new apps, bringing in new e-commerce or omni-channel, you're putting data and data science in place, but you just digitize. You don't know where you're going. 70% of it comes down to the lack of engagement, and that leads to resistance. As I said, the frozen middle often actually holds you back. And if you don't have that engagement, you will fail 70% of the time through this. If you're not innovating, you have incoherent action. Your transformation should be driving you forward, making more money, having better employee or community outcomes. If you have technology, and again, it's not just whether you're using technology or not, maybe you actually bought a system from 1995. Maybe it's a terrible user experience. Maybe it actually pushes you 3 steps back from what you're actually trying to achieve. That leads to a great deal of frustration. And of course, finally, if you don't have data, you're going to stagnate. And that's a real problem. So that's where the 16% of organizations that do well actually avoid these kind of five or so pitfalls. And of course, underpinning all this, people need to be there. Upskill them, give them good digital literacy, make sure your leaders are pushing from the front, and you'll generally be quite successful. I was going to talk about disruption as well, and I think this is really important because sometimes it doesn't matter what I say or people like us talk to you about in digital. Sometimes your business is so buffered from digital change, doesn't matter. But that's not the case for all industries. If you are in this space where you maybe develop an alcoholic beverage, for example, you're in the durable quarter. Yes, the go-to-market model will change, the way you sell a beer will change, but the reality is beer. It's unlikely to digitize your beer. It's a durable industry. But there'll be changes around the way they actually go to market, engage consumers, customers, etc. Over here is the viability quarter. These are, punished industries that have gone through and weathered the change. Great example is publishing. Years ago, when Amazon rose to fame as a bookseller, they really attacked the local bookstores. We saw a lot of Borders and other bookstores close. But in fact, the publishing industry is even stronger than ever because they embrace digital, embrace the change of formats, and are now doing ebooks, digital publishing, using iPads, Kindles, and so on. So they weathered the storm from potentially going out of business altogether into a brand new format and are now a very viable industry. Where you're vulnerable, your insurance providers, healthcare distributors, power producers, and so on, because a lot of it's getting disaggregated or actually being changed by what's happening in digital. But the real volatile quarter, where you should really worry, is that top right-hand corner. If you are in consumer technology, tech changes all the time. In fact, if you think about the handphone form factor, this thing here, why do we carry a brick in our pockets? Well, because big companies said this is the best kind of form that we could take calls and engage with people. In fact, Apple has actually put a secret mandate, I think around 2032 to 2035. They will get rid of this. It'll be replaced by something biomechanical. Think about a pair of glasses, think about a pair of contact lens or eye drops that give you an augmented reality experience. The phone form factor will eventually go away sooner than you think. So if you're in the consumer tech space, you're in trouble. If you're in banking, financial services, they're being disrupted by fintech. Investment banking, utilities, and so on. All these different industries face severe disruption. And in fact, at most risk of disruption is here. Number one is media. Number two is telco. So if you work at SPH, probably have some challenges. If you work at Singtel, M1, StarHub, etc., also facing some challenges. Financial services, the big banks, retail, tech, insurance, consumer, even non-profit, as everything like things like GoFundMe, Kickstarters, etc., are actually disaggregating some of the charitable organizations. And actually it's because of two things. Really, it's a low barrier to entry into these sectors, and also there's a large legacy business. So for example, SPH and media, the media business itself, large legacy, which was advertising-driven model, but the low barrier is that anyone can publish a blog nowadays. It's really easy to do. You don't need to buy a printing press and actually put out a newspaper. So that's one of the reasons why new companies have actually taken the lunch of companies like that. And second last, I'll leave you with is, these are the most innovative companies that BCG put together last year. They don't have a 2022 version yet. Now, of course, it's BCG, so it's obviously a little American skewed, but I want to leave, there's probably a few takeaways here. Let's have a look at the top 10. Apple, Alphabet, Amazon, Microsoft, Tesla, Samsung, IBM, Huawei, Sony, and Pfizer. There's a common thread of being tech companies there, isn't there? Now, 2021 is a little different from 2020 and 2019 because you can see Pfizer and some of the pharma companies really coming to the fore in terms of innovation. They've done well with their vaccines for COVID, etc. But let's kind of consider them outliers for this. But then let's look at number 20. Siemens, LG, Facebook, Alibaba, Oracle, Dell, Cisco, Target, HP, and Johnson & Johnson. Again, they're very specifically skewed towards tech companies. In fact, look at the whole list now. Well, you got Nike there, Procter & Gamble, a few medical companies, Merck, Abbott, etc. But most of them are either tech companies or they spend so much money on technology that they're almost like a tech company. Someone like a Tesla or Walmart are fundamentally tech companies at the end of the day. So a couple of things. Where are the Asian companies, and specifically where are the Singapore companies? Tumbleweeds. We're not there yet. Number two, where do we see the other industries? I mean, innovation happens everywhere. You don't need to be a Facebook or a Google to be driving innovation. So, the challenge is, well, are we being left behind in Singapore and in Asia? And are the industries that we're working in, whether it be government, NGO, ports, infrastructure, banks, and so on, that's what Singapore is all about. Why aren't we there? So again, we do face disruption, but the idea is we need to make sure we want to eventually get into lists like this and be seen for the amazing digital transformations that our Singapore companies and Asian companies can do. And my last slide, kind of leave you with some summaries here, is number one, we've had 10 years of digital transformation forced upon us during COVID. 10 years. Consumers coming online, been forced to buy online, been forced to actually put in place the technology to engage employees working remotely, working from home. We also know it's incredibly difficult to keep up with that massive change that we've just seen over the last 2 years. We need to be constantly upskilling, reskilling, putting in place new programs, and frankly, it's tiring. But to keep up, you need to constantly be at the cutting edge, constantly be reskilling. Digital transformation programs often fail. Doesn't mean that you won't lose your job. A lot of people move from company to company, but ultimately for the money being spent for the outcomes you're looking for, obviously you want to be focused on success. So how do you get that success? And digital disruption is here, has been here for a long time, and will impact you. There is no doubt about this. It doesn't matter whether you're a consumer or you're working in one of those vulnerable businesses. The change of form factor in phones, the way we engage with the internet is changing. Even things like Web3 actually on the periphery are going to become bigger. They will impact your daily life, the way that you engage with your partner, engage with your friends, as a business with the consumers and so on. It's here to stay and it's going to impact you. But with that, hopefully I've set the scene. Thank you very much.